Rather than try to tell a new story from this point forward, you would be better off, they're talking about human beings, you would be better off retelling the old story. And if you go back and you retell the old story, you will automatically change the trajectory into the future. How's that for some deep cause and effect? I was about to say.
Now, I do understand the problem of climate change. We have taken down too much forest. And what has happened, to understand your history, you need to know the history of the planet. You need to know the history of the world. It has taken 400 million years to present the forest as we know it to us. 400 million years. And in 50 years with a chainsaw, we can take it down. We did not know that our oxygen came from the trees. We did not know that 50 and 100 years ago. Now we do. So there is no excuse for damaging the forest, your forest in Borneo, the forests in Australia, the forests that are on fire right now in California and down in the Amazon, and all of the forests across the world.
And I began to understand in so many ways, spiritually, physically, emotionally, how interconnected all is. But I could hear those trees falling. Just the horrific, horrific sound. It's like an earthquake in the ground when they hit the ground. And I just hated the loggers. How could they do this? What is wrong with these terrible, evil people? What, I mean, then I got to know many of them. And I discovered that they had no choice and that they were often logging to pay for their most basic needs and most especially for healthcare. When you're a subsistence agriculturalist, you can mostly feed your family, you can get the things you need, and especially the things that you need that you can plan for, like a wedding and a house, right? But a medical emergency can cost an entire year's income, and you have no way of predicting it. And they love the forest. They called the forest their mother. They fully understood they didn't want to lose it, but they had no choice. And partly, I think it's very, very important to recognize they had no choice because of a long history of colonization.
Racial injustices, to colonization, to the patriarchy. All of these are intersectional crises that we're facing. And every woman here and many of the women listening are, could speak for hours, because we're unpacking a deep narrative that is so, so destructive. And at the same time, we're in this amazing moment that we know, as we look at existential crises, that everything can break open. Like the 11th hour is here and everything can break open. Our hearts are breaking open. We are falling apart in all the right ways that we should be falling apart. And we have the chance to renew and reweave our world. And it's through conversations like this and many others. And it's a deep process. We have been in there's a wonderful woman from Ecuador. She's a Sariaco woman. Her name is Ana Santi. And we were with her. We helped bring her to the United Nations climate talks when the Paris climate agreement was first signed. And we were at a press conference. And I'm sure it was the first press conference she's ever been to. She's a woman from deep in the jungle of the Amazon rainforest. And she gave this beautiful speech. And one of the things I remember she said that was so powerful, she said, in standing for the Amazon, she was saying, we women can do anything. We run through the jungle at forest at night with our babies on our backs to protect our forests. We will stand anywhere. We are descendants of the jaguar, and we women can do anything. And I just love that, because she reminded us of the power of women, and also to remember that the jaguar, the animals, the forests, the plant animals have been on this earth before us, and we are literally their descendants.
I just want to say, finally, there's lots of things that were in the chat about, yes, but use plastics, and it's so black and white. We want to turn everything into black and white, and it really isn't as simple as that. So, you know, I sit here thinking, oh, I wish I could have my life over again and do something that's so much more worthwhile, and really singing my song. But I am singing my song to say that I think business can be a force for good. I think that if we could re-educate business, and Kinari, you said this, you know, the people who are deforesting, they're doing it for a particular reason. It's not black and white, and we can't turn the world into good and evil. We have to all work together. We have to come together to find our voices. Women have to find our voices, because we are the center of love and care. We are the mothers. And we have to find a way of doing things differently. And I can speak from the heart on this, because I found a company, a business that turns over €500 million a year, that makes products very commercial. But I found a way that where we can do so much good through a commercial route, and where we don't have to sell our principles, where we can be true to our values, where we can live our purpose, not just as a company, but as single individuals. Because I know, as a product of a farmer and a doctor, that I chose, that this path that I am walking, I chose when I entered this world. And I'm just starting to realize that.
Businesses. I am so excited to be working with business, because it's like saying, well, none of us have ever bought anything. You know, it's like we're so busy demonizing the oil companies. I demonize the oil companies. Some of the stuff that they've done is absolutely horrific. Some of the companies that I've bought some of my favorite you know, things from are horrific. And yet we have all funded and are all part of the funding of the world that is destroying us. And so we're doing it to ourselves. So one of the first things I think we need to do is to reflect, is to stop throwing stones, is to understand that we're all drivers, to understand that there are so many things that we can all be doing that are constructive and proactive and responsible, and that sitting throwing stones at those people that are trying to do something and finding fault with it while we're doing nothing is not a loving, not a reverence-based way of living, and it doesn't create unity. And one of the strongest things I feel like we need to be doing in terms of why our attitude to each other matters so deeply is we need to be looking for the best in each other. We need to be supporting what's working. We need to be supporting what's strengthening rather than finding fault. It doesn't help to undercut. Like, we've got to be done with that.
And what I feel is that there are also a lot of people who don't understand that there is more than one way to be human here. And so this is part of the big awakening, probably the biggest awakening, I think, is to realize that paradigm is a choice. How could it occur to people who don't have grandmothers like I do, who don't have places to go for people who look like me, to be able to hear about another world, another way of being human? How could they possibly know? This is where my radical bridging impulse comes from. So if you're born generation into generation of thinking, this health system, that's just how the earth is. This financial system, well, that's just how the earth is. This science system, well, that's just how the earth is. Like generation after generation, it's hard to crack open that understanding that maybe that's not how it is. So consent is a very important piece. I've been speaking a lot about it. I wasn't planning on speaking about it here, but I want to say that if indeed this is a free will construct, then our consent is very important. If our consent is overridden, which is kind of happening right and left, because we're in a power over paradigm. I always make this shape. We're in a power over paradigm in which might makes right, and where you have to overcome somebody else in order to have what you need. It is not a paradigm that is set up for collaboration or cooperation. Meanwhile, the Mother Earth is set up entirely for cooperation and collaboration as being an interconnected system, or an interbeing, or mitakwie oyasin. So we have a dominant system here that is completely at odds with everything going on around us. That's what we're looking for. We want the dividends of life. We want the dividends of right relations. We want the dividends of all the children are fed. We want the dividends of all the elders are happy. We want the dividends of the women being at peace to bring forth the future generations with the new understanding. So let's think about, what can these dividends be besides money? And once we unhook them from the current financial system, the sky is the limit. For some reason, I'm being drawn into working with some wealth groups. And that'd be like the last place I would think I would find myself, is people discussing finance, how finance works. But what is being expressed in those circles is, of course, that money is upstream of so much of all of these activities, right? So Elder Orland Bishop says something to the effect of, money is the largest and perhaps deepest unconscious agreement that humanity has ever made. So I'm thinking about that. And I mean, think about it. It comes out of nowhere. It's like, it wasn't here. It's not part of Earth. So it's definitely something that we conjured, and it's a spell that we have been under in every direction, affects everything. And yet, again, we were born generationally into this idea that it just is. That must be the way the Earth is. Well, you know what? That's not the way the Earth is. The Earth's economy is radical abundance and fearless generosity.